And what I'm going to do in the next 20, 25 minutes is to speak about ad monetization. I'm not going to speak at all about iron source. It's not really interesting. It's all about ad monetization from your eyes and what you can do and not do and what I believe is the best way to make sure that you are doing it right. I'm going to combine kind of how you optimizing the revenue of ad monetization while keeping the user experience. So I'll start with a general statement. I believe that although ad monetization became a significant part for all of us, right? It's a significant revenue source for all of us. The level of sophistication and attention and how kind of sophisticated are we while optimizing ad monetization is far below IAP, right? The industry in the IAP aspect got to a very, very good place in terms of segmentations, packages, pop-ups, many, many things that you all do to optimize your revenue from IAP. But for ad monetization, it's something that we a little bit left behind. While I think that with a little bit more attention and tools, we can achieve much more out of our ad monetization strategy. And I'm going to go via a few steps that can help you and, of course, us to go and do it. So in general, when I'm speaking about ad monetization, by the way, I divide this world into two groups of ad units. The first will be, of course, user-initiated ads, right? It's ads that the user initiated, mainly rewarded ads, because this is the reason why the user initiated ad. It will be rewarded video and offer, right? And the other group will be system-initiated ads. These guys are all our ads that you all initiated, interstitials, banners. The user didn't decide if, when, and how many to watch. And I'll start with speaking about rewarded ads, user-initiated, with great focus on rewarded video. Mopab were here just like 5 minutes ago and said that rewarded video is today the biggest and the leading ad unit for most of the game developers. And I'm going to focus on this. So what is so magical about rewarded ads in general, but specifically on rewarded video? First, the revenue is great, right? The eCPMs that you get by monetizing with rewarded video is usually 2x, 3x, even more comparing to interstitial, definitely banners, native ad, etc. So it's definitely a great revenue source. But what's nice about this ad unit, and this is why it grew so much, for my opinion, is that on top of being a great revenue source, it's actually a very, very good UX for the user, right? Under the assumption that the user will watch an ad only if, when, and how many he chooses to, the UX that the user gets from engaging with this ad unit is much, much better comparing to, let's say, interstitial banners or any other ad units. This is also very useful. And under this assumption that the UX is good and it's all opt-in ad unit, we can probably feel comfortable that it shouldn't hurt the retention, right? It shouldn't hurt the session length, unlike other ad units that might and probably will. And it's important to make sure that it also doesn't hurt the IAP, and we will touch this point as well. But if you take it to the next level, not only that rewarded video shouldn't hurt your retention or session length, if you are doing it sophisticated enough, rewarded video actually should increase your retention, increase your session length, and might even increase your IAP conversion. And it's all under the assumptions that today the revenue model for most game developers is in-app purchasing, right? So when you build your games, you generated some need from the users to purchase these virtual goods that you offer in the game in order to make faster progress, to enjoy the full content of the game. But, as you all know, about 97% of the users won't pay no matter what, right? So what happens for these users, they kind of have this missing the tools to make more advance in the game or to enjoy the full content, but they are not paying. And this is where rewarded video gets into the picture, because this is another way for the user to enjoy, just like the payer users that have higher retention, that have higher session length, the non-paying users with the rewarded video implementation can have a way to enjoy the premium goods, the virtual goods of the game, and to actually play more and enjoy more content of the game. Also for IAP, by the way, one of the things that you can do is kind of give a small reward for a user that gives him the feeling of how it feels when you have the virtual goods that the game offers, and then to offer him to buy more of this. And many, many times it will help you to convert more users into becoming paying users. My bottom line, and then I got it pretty early in this deck to the bottom line, is that my recommendation, my personal recommendation, is always start with maximizing rewarded ads before moving to the other options, which are very, very important and legit as well, of course. But today we see it in the hyper-casual world usually, that game developers develop their game, they add the rewarded video. Usually it's not optimized at all, and very, very early they move to make most of the revenue from interstitial, and native, and banners and other ad units that do not have all the good effects that rewarded video has. And my recommendation is to make sure that you maximized the potential of rewarded video in your application, in your game, and we're going to see what is the potential soon. And then, on top of this, or in parallel, you're going to add the interstitial, the banners, the other tools to generate revenue from ads inside your game. So, optimizing the rewarded video in your game, what does it mean? How do you optimize rewarded video? And it's going to be in 3 steps. The first step is that you need to understand what are you going to measure to even understand is my rewarded video optimized or not. And the equation for understanding and analyzing your rewarded video implementation is pretty simple, right? The revenue and the effect that rewarded video has is impressions times the eCPM, right? So let's say that you are generating 1 million impressions and your eCPM is $10. You are generating $10,000 from rewarded video, and this is the effect that rewarded video has in your game. Let's start with the left side of the equation, the number of impressions. Here in rewarded video, it's all in the hands of the publisher, of the game developer, right? Me as a network or any other one that you are working with can come with great recommendation, with experience, with many, many different things. But at the end of the day, it's you, the game developer, that will decide how well are you going to convert your daily active users into impressions. And the way that I look at it is in this formula. Let's start with the left thing. First of all, it's the DAU that you have, right? It depends on many, many things that you do with your app. But let's assume that you have 1 million daily active users. The next thing that you need to measure is what is your engagement rate. Engagement rate is what share of users choose to engage with rewarded video. Now remember, in interstitial or any other system-initiated ad, you decide what will be this engagement rate, right? You decide who to show the interstitial to and how many. But in rewarded video, you actually need to be clever enough to make the user, or to make enough users to choose to engage with rewarded video. So let's say that you have 40% engagement rate. It means that out of your 1 million daily active users, you have 400K daily engaged users that choose on a daily basis to engage with rewarded video. The next thing that you have is the usage rate, which means how many impressions each one of these engaged users is generating on a daily basis, right? And let's say that this will be 6. So in general, the number of impressions or your impressions DAU rate is 2.4, right? This is something that every game developer that's using rewarded video and want to make sure that he's optimizing needs to at least know, okay, what is my impression DAU rate? What is my engagement rate? What is my usage rate? By the way, you can also have 60% engagement rate and 4 impressions per daily engaged user. You will still have 2.4 million impressions, but you got there in a whole different way, which will affect your revenue, and we'll touch this soon. Then we have the right side of the equation, right? The eCPM. Let's say that you took this 1 million daily active users, you converted them into 2.4 million impressions. You kind of gave the ad networks these 2.4 million impressions, and now the ad networks converting these impressions into revenue using the eCPM that you get. Most of the eCPM that you will get is being done by the network itself, and it depends on how well the creative that the network is using, how well the targeting is, how well the relationship with the advertisers is, do dynamic bidding, suppression list, many, many tools for ad networks to make sure that the eCPM is the highest as possible. But even in the eCPM side of the equation, here as well, to the publisher, there is an influence on the eCPM that you get, and it's via IPM. IPM means installs per 1,000 impressions, right? We live mainly in a performance business. Most of the advertisements and campaigns today in the gaming world are performance and not brand. It means that most of the revenue is generated by installs. And here what we see is that, and you all probably know it, is that for the first impression, the install rate is much higher than, let's say, the sixth impression. So here you can see, for example, that on average, among 1,000 first impressions, you will have about 6 installs, while for 1,006 impressions, you will have only 3 installs. What does it mean? First of all, if you remember this slide, it means that if you have 60% here and 4 here, it's better than have 40% here and 6 here, because it means that you have much more first impressions and less fifth and sixth impressions, right? It means that your IPM and installs rate will be much higher, and the ECPM that you will get from the ad networks will be higher as well. It means that, by the way, every additional impression per user is incremental revenue, but it takes your ECPM a little bit down because there are less installs rate for these impressions. Cool. So we started with what KPIs you need to be familiar with and you need to be able to measure to understand your rewarded video implementation. Now let's discuss what would be a good number, right? So okay, I understood. I need to monitor engagement rate, usage rate, IPM. Okay, I have this data. Now what? My numbers are good, my numbers are bad. What would be a good number? And these numbers is numbers that we took from our network. We are working with thousands of publishers. So it gives kind of a good picture of the numbers that today we have in the industry. For engagement rate, an average okay number will be 30%, right? So if you have 30%, you can feel comfortable, you can feel okay with yourselves. If you have 10%, you are way below average, but 30% will be kind of an average number. 50% is where the more sophisticated publishers can get to, and we're going to discuss a little bit how can you get there, and how you can generate more impressions and first impressions out of your daily active user. Then for usage rate, 4 is an average, 8 is a good number, and as you can see, the total impression DAU rate can be anywhere between 0.5, and we have partners that can generate out of 1 million daily active users only 500K impressions, but we have other publishers that out of the same amount of daily active users, 1 million, they can generate 4 million impressions, which is about 8x the revenue that the other publishers is generating, even though the potential is the same, right? They have the same DAU, they have the same starting point. They just implemented better, and they just have better KPIs. For IPM, so here it depends on the country and on the genre, and this is also something that I recommend you to monitor. You can get this data from your networks and to understand, okay, my IPM is good or bad. For example, if you will implement rewarded video in a place that is kind of a climax in the game, let's say, okay, you die, and if you watch a video, you get a second chance, probably the IPM that you will get will be lower because the willingness from the user to engage with the ad, even if you like the ad, to go and make an install is much lower comparing to engagement in a more clean environment, in main screen, in places that the user feel much more comfortable to engage with the different ads. Then we get to the third part, which means how do I get there, right? So I understood what I need to monitor. I understand what is a good goal for each KPI, but my KPIs are lower. How can I take them up? So these few tips that we got from different publishers that we are working with, and I think that they are helping to increase the KPI that I just discussed. First of all, I think that there is a great advantage of having ads from day one. Some publishers prefer to go live without ads, but educating your users to engage with rewarded video from day one usually generate higher KPIs in all aspects that I discussed. Then the reward itself, which reward do you choose to have, and how creative are you with different rewards that you offer to the users for engaging with rewarded video. First thing, I think that it has to be part of the game's core economy, right? If you'll offer a reward that is not really part of the game's core economy, let's say different skin for something, probably the engagement that you will be able to generate from users is much lower. Then we have the soft or hard currency. For games that do have soft and hard currency, I think that the best way is to connect the rewarded video into the soft currency while keeping the IAP connected to the hard currency, of course. The reward has to be valuable, and you will see that, and I recommend you to test it, and you will see that if, let's say, you increase the reward amount by 2x for a group of users, you will see that the engagement rate and the usage rate that you will get from this group of users will be higher, right? It's all a matter of give and take. The user see what you offer him. Okay, it's 10 coins for watching a video. Not good enough for me. I'm not going to spend 25 seconds of my time. But for 20 coins, I would do it, right? So the reward has to be valuable to the user. It has to be different from IAP in order to avoid cannibalization. We'll touch it. But this is a key fact to actually generate good KPIs. The reward has to be dynamic in a sense that in level 1, offering 10 coins to the user is probably good enough. But if you keep the reward all through the levels of the game, let's say level 100, the same amount of reward will not be interesting enough for the user as it used to be in level 1, right? You now have much more coins. The thing that you need to buy in the game is much more expensive, and therefore the reward should grow in order to keep the level of difficulty of the game and to keep the engagement that you got in the first place. And my feeling is that rewarded video should be a very, very diversified ad unit in a sense that you should have 4 or 5 different placements in your game. You should have 4 or 5 different reward type to actually kind of answer all the needs of your users. Some users will engage to get extra 2 lives. Some users will engage with rewarded video to get 10 coins. Some users will engage with rewarded video to get another spin in the game. So as you offer more diversified options to the users to engage with the rewarded video and different rewards, you will see that you'll be able to address more users and generate much more impressions out of total daily active users. Then there is the timing, which I discussed. I truly believe that by putting the rewarded video traffic driver in a clean environment, main screen, not in the climax of the game, you will be able to generate much more IPM, much more installs, and much higher eCPM out of the impressions that you serve. End of session is a great timing. Either way, the user is chilled, he finished the session, now he can watch a video to double the reward that he won in this session, and the willingness to engage with the ad is much better in this case. And at the end of the day, you just need to put in mind that the impression that you serve need to serve both sides. It needs to serve the user, but it also needs to serve the advertiser, right? He will pay you only if the user will engage properly with the ad, and then you will generate much more revenue. The traffic driver has to be visible. I see cases where games put, let's say, the traffic driver in the store only, right? So you have the rewarded video only in the store itself. The problem here is that only 15% of your users are getting into the store. So from the beginning, the 100% potential of this traffic driver is only 15% of the user, because the rest are not getting the store and not even seeing the option to watch a rewarded video. Therefore, it has to be visible. Users need to understand, okay, I see it, I can engage with it whenever they want. Main screen is probably the best place to put a rewarded video traffic driver, as the users is hanging in the main screen much more, and all 100% of the users are there. And you can also use pop-ups, which is great, with an option to watch a video and to double anything or whatever reward you are offering. You will see that this as well will increase the awareness and the engagement rate of the ad unit. It has to be clear to the user. He needs to understand if the button is just, let's say, something small, play, that the user don't really understand what am I going to get if I will click here. Then you will see again that the engagement rate will drop, while watch and earn 10 coins will probably generate much more impressions and engagement for you. And for capping and pacing, it's also something that many game developers are thinking about. Okay, how many impressions should I show? Should I show 3, 4, 5, 10 impressions? Should I cap in any stage? And I think that here it's all a question of LTV, right? In general, I wouldn't recommend you to cap in any place unless you get to a point that showing more impressions to the user is not generating more LTV. Let's say if you see that there is some cannibalization for IAP, then maybe keep it only on 2 impressions is the best way to generate total higher ARPU. It's all a question of LTV and how much you want to generate in total ads and IAP from your user. And this is also my recommendation to avoid IAP cannibalization. First, try to distinguish between the currency, right? If you have the same currency in the store and in rewarded video, the risk is much higher. While if watching a video is giving you lives, coins, another spin, while the store is hard currency, gems, or anything else, the risk of cannibalizing your IAP is much lower. You can use capping and pacing, like I said. Try to find the right number that generates the higher ARPU from your users, higher LTV, including both the revenue that you're generating from ads and from IAP. If you are in a place that you feel sophisticated enough, use a segmentation. And then if you know to predict very early in the game that these users won't become a paying users, right? Like in a very, very high probability. For these groups of users, you can have higher reward, you can have no capping. Why not maximizing their ad LTV potential if there is no price and no risk of cannibalizing the IAP? Because either way, they are not going to pay in your game. And at the end of the day, it's all about testing and data-driven decision. What is working for one game is not always working for the other game. I don't even know why. And this is why testing and checking different places and different capping and different rewards and finding which setup generating the higher output, the higher LTV for a user is the best thing. I'm going to speak 2 minutes about Offerall because it's a complementary rewarded ads that I think that is less familiar in our industry. In general, Offerall is just like rewarded video. It's a user-initiated ad unit. The user click and you see several offers that he can choose to complete. Right? It's a little bit different from a rewarded video. He gets into a page like the one that you see here, and he can complete different missions and get reward. And the publisher, in this sense, are giving the reward to the user only when they get paid, right? This is a little bit different from a rewarded video. In a rewarded video, you give the reward to the user for completion, even though if there is no install, you probably won't get paid. In Offerall, you give the reward only when you get paid. It's kind of similar to a store in that sense. The process from the user is much longer, right? The process of rewarded video is 20, 25 seconds. It's very, very easy to the user to engage in several places in the app, several times a day. Offerall will require 10, 15, 20 minutes of the user time. It's much more complicated for the user. But what's nice here is that the average revenue for the publisher out of a completion in Offerall is about $3. Unlike 2 cents in the United States that you get for a completion of rewarded video, which resembles $20 eCPM. And this is why our recommendation for Offerall is to treat it just like a second store, right? So you have this layer, the 3% most savvy users, they will become a paying users. Then you have another layer of, let's say, 40% of the users that are watching rewarded video and generating revenue, and then you have 50% that are doing nothing and generating no revenue to your app. Offerall is kind of in the middle between the rewarded video and the paying users, right? They are not savvy enough to spend $10 in your app, but they are savvy enough to spend 15 minutes of their time generating $3 revenue for you, just like they made a deposit in the store, but Apple and Google don't take a share of it, and actually generating much more revenue for you. It can be very significant for many publishers. If you look at AdCap by Congregate or Gem City, Family Guy, you will see there that they're using both Offerall and RV, and Offerall is performing very well and almost doubling the rewarded video revenue. These, by the way, the numbers, just like we reviewed for rewarded video, that you should aim to have in order to feel comfortable and know that you maximize your Offerall implementation. I don't have time to deep dive into system initiated ads. I just can tell you that 50% of your users won't pay and won't engage with the rewarded ads that you just went over. And system initiated ads, interstitial, banners, native are probably the only way to monetize these users, and it's an incremental revenue for the users that do engage with rewarded video and other tools. If you are a hyper-casual game with no good virtual economy, you don't really have a lot of rewards to offer to a user. Here you need to be creative to still think how you can maximize the rewarded video before getting to interstitial. And the risk of interstitial is, of course, clear. It's UX, and probably you might hurt retention and banners. And the only 5 tips that I'm offering here is, one, think about timing and placement. Here as well, there is difference between showing interstitial in one place in the app comparing to end of session where the user is much more open to see interstitial. Frequency and capping, I think that a good number, average number, this is what many are doing, is about 3 impressions per user per session. But the recommendation here is just make it, like I said before, ARPU LTV decision, right? Because showing more interstitial will definitely increase your ARPDAU because you have more impressions and more revenue, but it might hurt your intention. So the lifetime value or the total ARPU will go down, and you need to find a place where showing interstitial is generating the higher, and how many interstitial is generating the higher ARPU for your users. This was a deep dive in 25 seconds. I don't have time to go over all examples, but I will be very, very happy to sit with any one of you or just take it on a call next week and to kind of share more information. Thanks.